Reincarnation Memory. A Theosophical Outline by Anti-Savanainen. Introduction. Reincarnation along with karma are the key doctrines in Theosophy. Interestingly, there is scientific evidence suggesting that sometimes young children can have verifiable memories from the alleged past lives. However, these cases are exceptions because usually people do not remember their past lives. This is quite understandable from the Theosophical point of view. Memories of the past lives do not reside within a personality, but in the inner self. What would it take to gain this kind of memory? I will consider this question by drawing from the teachings of Pekka Ervast, who was a pioneer in the Finnish Theosophical movement. Self-knowledge and reincarnation memory. It is well established by psychological research on memory that everyday memory is prone to mistakes and forgetting. Hence, it is quite easy to see that the memory regarding past lives must be very elusive. According to Theosophy, personality changes from one incarnation to another. What remains the same is the inner self or higher ego, because this present personality has never lived before. It is quite clear that typically there are no past life memories in the physical brain. Although we do not remember our past lives, we know from our theosophical studies that many features of our personality as well as strengths and weaknesses have their karmic origins in our past lives. That is why we might be able to deduce something about our past lives on the basis of self-knowledge. One might think, say, that if I happen to be a skillful mathematician or author, I must have been that also in my past life. However, Ervast states that the present incarnation is not direct continuation of the previous one. Disciples of a master make an exception to this rule. Still, it is possible to have some indications from the past life by inspecting unpleasant features in our character and troublesome incidents in our destiny. What might have been our past life like in which we have wanted what is so repulsive to us now? One must be very careful in drawing conclusions. This calls for viveka, that is, discrimination. On the other hand, if Theosophy has it right, we all will have at some point reincarnation memory. The first prerequisite is that we have the correct attitude. It is wise to accept the idea of reincarnation and past life memories as possible. Yet at the same time we must not demand it. The lower and higher memory of nature. Ervast makes a distinction between the memory of physical brain, which is active in the ordinary consciousness, and the memory of the etheric brain, which acts as a link to the lower memory of nature and its etheric panorama. This lower memory of nature is also called astral light in the occult literature. It photographs objectively everything that happens, good and bad alike, as the etheric panorama contains the seeds of all human emotions and feelings. It is in the immediate vicinity of the astral plane. Ervast states that mere clairvoyant investigation does not provide reliable knowledge on our past lives, although the tableau of the memories from past lives is indeed in the astral light. There is also another memory in nature, the Book of Life, which is the higher memory of nature, which is sometimes called as Akasha in theosophical literature. This memory cannot contain anything bad or weak. It can only preserve that which can stand eternal life. It resides in the world of the inner self. It is the heavenly world. All pain and agony of the earthly existence have been erased, whereas all the spiritual qualities and skills remain. The Book of Life contains reliable memory of past incarnations. However, it does not contain details of our past lives, such as names. Rather, it contains knowledge on how one has developed in each life and what is his or her spiritual path like. If one gains an access to the Book of Life, they see that any freedom of certain weaknesses is won in the past lives. The human being sees that justice rules in the world and that all good features have been achieved through great effort and suffering. Interestingly, the Kalevala, which is the Finnish national epic, has a parallel for the Book of Life. Antero Vipunen, the greatest hero and sage in Kalevala, Vainamoinen, seeks for spiritual knowledge from Antero Vipunen, who responds thusly, quote begins, "Then the verseful Vipunen, oldest sage with oldest wisdom, in his mouth the greatest magic, in his bosom endless power, opened up his ark of sayings, and revealed his store of verses, for good singing, best of chanting, of the deepest origins." Quote ends. Spiritual reincarnation memory. According to Ervast, it is possible to recreate the personalities of past lives. But this can take place only by first raising to the consciousness of the inner self and then coming down to the lower memory of nature. It seems to me that this feat is possible only for the initiates. However, those in the mystical path will see what they have spiritually achieved in their path and what lies ahead of them before they reach the adepthood. In this phase, the disciple will learn to know their master or possibly many masters. If the work done by a disciple requires it, the master can show him or her the past lives. It is also possible to have some impressions from the past lives via dreams and visions. Furthermore, ordinary clairvoyance can show some images from the memory of nature. But there are no guarantees for their validity, as already mentioned earlier. At any rate, reincarnation memory will come along with spiritual growth. Urvest writes about this in the context of a maxim of the non-resistance to evil in the Sermon on the Mount. Quote begin. What is the hidden meaning of this advice? We can see then that from the invisible world a guiding power is focused to direct the lives of humans and animals. Our eyes will open to see that the life of a man can be understood and explained only on the grounds of reincarnation, because the causes of events in our present life cannot be found in this life, but in the past, which is on the other side of birth. The unshaken balance of the law of karma presupposes that a human being is a reincarnating spiritual being. And how wonderful, when our vision grows and develops, it changes into reincarnation memory. Memories from the past will start flashing in front of our eyes, first obscurely, then more and more clearly. We start to understand why we have developed into what we are. Quote ends. Finally, let us discuss why we usually must forget our past lives. Theosophy teaches that we enjoy the heavenly state, Devachan, before we are born. It is the perfect state of happiness and bliss. In that state it is possible to read the Book of Life and have an overview of the forthcoming incarnation. Keeping this in mind, Urvest provides 2 reasons why one must forget the heavenly state in past lives. Firstly, if the person would remember what suffering and hardship is waiting for him or her, he or she might not have enough will to be alive. Secondly, to learn how to love unselfishly and altruistically, the person must forget the pre-earthly happiness enjoyed in the heavenly state before incarnation. It is worth pointing out that everyone has wanted to be born, despite the pain and suffering which might be waiting in the new life. At the end of life in Devachan, one sees the vision of the ideal human being and sees that the only way one can develop towards that ideal is to be born again on earth. According to Urvest, the human being solemnly promises that, quote begins, now I want to try better than before to be pure, honest, and peaceful within myself. I want to be loving towards all beings. And out of joy he makes a promise to God, I will give my all. Quote ends.